No, she's.
All right, I'd like to call the Village of Planning Commission to a meeting to order on Thursday, July 27th at 6:30 p.m. You'll all rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Grimm,
Here.
Blake. Nellis. Newman,
Here.
Janet,
Here.
Haylander.
Here.
Yates.
Here. Statement of public notice.
Has been posted.
Item 5, discussion of possible approval of planning commission meeting minutes from 6/12/23. Anybody have any corrections?
Under item 6. Where we had special permit for recycled asphalt, I believe that we said that was a one time that they could stockpile. So they can grind to put it in the parking area. It's not to be forever that they can keep stockpiling. It'd be down towards the, just above the B paragraph.
I would like to add to that too. I know in discussions, it was talked about he could use recycled for paving. But that's kind of against our paving ordinance. Whereas he has to pave, the drive, where the trucks are turning and up to the garage doors. Now, years past, we, allowed, the, parking area to be recycled, but not the driving area. So I don't know if you wanna revisit that. Is the site plan approved or is it?
Yeah,
still pending
yes, it
until
was
he owns the
approved.
property?
Yeah, it was approved because he's got asphalt up to that little building. And then we're gonna allow him to turn, the rest of that area is all gonna be recycled, so he can make big truck swing back up in there, that's why. But I don't want, the way it reads here is that he could have recycling piles there forever, and that's not what it was intended. You know,
And the other issue I have is, I assume it's gonna take some regrading on that property. And, the runoff now goes to the wetlands, which is not permitted. So I wanted,
actually
to
been,
discuss it with Ben, but I think has to be more done with that site plan. It doesn't have to be with the minutes, I'm just raising the issue.
But Brenda, did you capture Mr. Grimm's
Yes.
comments?
I'm not entirely. Explain it again.
so right now, he has to have a special permit for,
Where are you?
it's towards the. Let's see, you see the bottom of the 8th paragraph? Grimm and Janet's motion to recommend special use permit for recycled asphalt.
Okay,
That was only supposed to be there long enough for him to be able to grind enough to spread for his parking area.
Right. I think that was just allowing them to have that as
One
a
time.
surface,
Yeah.
it's a surface area. So
I
if you
could
could
just
just
add
make
4
that-
parking lots and.
And the C is actually like SEA
Yeah.
motion.
See.
Yeah, C containers, SEA.
oh, I get it. I thought it was me.
And then under item number 7, do we know if BP is supposed to be bringing anything back?
They did, I sent it over to Ben, but I have not heard any of his comments on them.
I know they haven't addressed the light yet. Any other comments?
Hector, you were done with all the special permitting, right?
Ben was drafting that, and I don't know if it's been delivered.
So is this still a tabling item or is this?
Why don't you table it so we can discuss it with Ben next time? And maybe request a copy of the draft that he has of the permit, whether it's been issued or not. You delayed the approval of these minutes because there was incomplete information, but Ben did in fact listen to the recording.
In that case, I make a motion to table the 6/12 plan commission items 5, 6, and 7, and 8.
I recommend you table the whole thing. Yeah, it's
Okay.
easier to keep track. right?
Okay, I make a motion that we table the minutes from 6/12/2023.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to table the minutes from 6/12/23. Any further discussion?
Please let the village board know that we tabled it again, so they can table it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries with table of minutes. Item number 6, discussion and possible approval of plan commission meeting minutes from 7/10/23. That a motion? You care to make a motion to approve?
I'll motion that we approve the minutes from 7:10.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, citizens' comments. Do we have any citizen comments this evening? Nothing. There? No? Okay. Item number 8, discussion and possible action on sign permit application for Buck Buckley, West Good Hope Road, Landon, Wisconsin, 53046. I believe the applicant is here. This was tabled last time for the lack of any landscape plan, if you'll recall. It appears that they've have some landscaping indicated on here. You're just gonna do some land and stone slabs and some. What type of plantings are these? Do you know yet?
I don't know yet. I pretty much put with you guys, if you guys have a suggestion, I have no problem with whatever plant. It was just gonna be maybe one of those little grasses or two. Very simple, very simple.
So I would strongly suggest that you at least consult the landscaper about what types of plants are gonna be appropriate for that area and what height they're gonna get to, because all too often I see people put inappropriate plantings like some longer, taller grasses. Next thing you know, bottom half of your sign's hidden.
Yeah, that won't happen, but I do have a landscaper. Do you guys wanna know exactly what kind of plants?
I would prefer that you have them do an as-built drawing at least and submit that to staff. I think that would be a good idea, just so we have a record of what's planted there and what was.
I was actually gonna put no plants whatsoever, truthfully. I was gonna put 2 rocks and no plants, and just put the grass around it. I mean, that was my idea, but Ben said that, hey, they'd like to know what plants, and I said, whatever plants they want, so. I was gonna put no plants. If I couldn't put no plants there, I would prefer it. If you guys want plants, I will come back, another time with, plans.
All plantings are required by ordinance.
Yeah, our ordinance does require.
Like I
this
said,
type of sign.
Okay.
And as it's like now, my question would be, okay, the land and stone is very nice. I mean, I know a place that there's some town land and they have that stuff. We're gonna kind of know. How tall is this land and stone? How heavy are these chunks? I don't want you to just go down the road, get some little flagstone and throw it there and say there, So it's gotta be, 10 inches, something that we can physically see,
I will take measurements for you now that I know that, and I will take measurements of the stone. I'm having 2 stones and that's it. And, I will get, short plants. I guess that's what is required.
Were you planning on lighting this sign?
I am. From the top. And that's an extra permit down the line, I believe. But again, you guys tell me.
Currently from the Jones sign, I'm from Jones sign, we're not illuminating from the inside or anything, we're just installing.
So. I would just suggest that whatever motion or action gets taken on this, we just. Condition. another application if you end up adding lighting at a later date.
It would be a separate permit, separate application.
Or an updated sign application,
Okay.
just so we have a chance to look at it, to prove it.
Fair enough.
We don't want some, janky, rickety solar thing tacked up there with, staple gun or something.
Got it.
And then also, we gotta look at, make sure it's on the sign and not shining out on the roads and stuff.
Correct.
I have a question, is this, I see you got Buckley basement and cross roofing. Are you in the system as, with a plan of operation for cross roofing systems? Or is he in the system as Buckley, basement? Do we know, Brenda?
I think both.
Do you have two plan of operations on file? Do you know?
I do not know.
But I remember talking.
That was not part of my.
We knew about what he was doing.
Yeah, we knew there was gonna be.
Yeah.
I wanna make sure, because I see this is gonna be filed under cross roofing.
Oh,
And I think it should be also copied over, if he does have a second one, to put a copy in there, please.
yeah, when I get the lighting, I will tell you exactly what kind of lighting. I have a master electrician on staff, so I will tell you exactly what kind of lighting. I'll tell you exactly what wattage or whatever you got, he'll spell it out for you, so it's very, very clear. And I'll even probably go as far as to get you the degree of which it is shining on the sign, so it's not shining on people's eyes as they come down Good Hope.
So is this,
Acceptable on that one?
Yeah, also, you need electrical permit.
Okay,
if you were on,
Your,
it'll probably be low voltage, but I understand.
yeah, and your electrician has to be licensed in Atlanta.
He's got it.
so is this Max Metal panel, are you gonna have a channel in this 2-inch frame and then it's inset into that 2-inch channel? Is that what you're doing?
Great question. That's for Jones sign right next to me.
Yep.
There's gonna be a 2-inch square tube
Right.
frame.
The panel goes into that frame.
Yep, it's tie bond.
Yep. Max Metal die bond. Clean difference. And you're setting these posts in a concrete footing,
Correct.
what depth?
Whatever we need to be, I'm not sure our manufacturing install teams.
What depth do you, would
need it
you
to
like?
be-
Below the frost line.
Yeah, it should be below 4 foot.
Okay,
Below 4 foot it will be.
all right. I'll make a note.
Really into my comments. Anybody else has anything?
You like the sign?
Yeah, it's fine.
You'll have to remove all the little ones across the front then when this goes in.
Yep.
Was there a condition?
Let's see.
This is okay as it is. Yep, it doesn't have any lighting, so you'll have to come back.
Condition with the plan?
The planting and.
Again, he's got plans showing.
Yeah.
We probably don't require any.
But yeah, you should bring back as built.
Yeah. Right, but I would make a motion to approve this as presented.
Second,
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented. Any further discussion?
You wanna add the as-built?
Yeah, I would just recommend that you submit that to staff
Yeah.
when you get it done.
Fair enough.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate
Any
it.
other comments? Discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
You good?
Item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding a plan of operation and site plan for 7291 North Land Road, Land, Wisconsin, 53046. I believe all we were really kind of doing, we're cleaning up a few little items, right?
Yes, just.
We had given you some conditional approvals already to do some stuff. Sound right, Hector?
Yes, clarification regarding the type of plants in the area, but otherwise site layout
Yep.
has been approved.
Yep, and I see that you have created a key like we requested, indicating where all the plantings were and what they are. You've indicated the lighting, so this is excellent. Thank you very much for continuing to refine this for us.
I have, one question. Where you wrote on this page here. New sidewalk. That's because that's where that curb cut is, and so. Make sure you build it back to walk, standards, okay?
Yeah.
But the only thing I have a little bit of a question about is right off that front porch area, right in the corner. You're gonna put in a stone mulch. And the problem with stone mulch once in a while, it gets out on the sidewalk and that could create a hazard.
Sure.
So think about that, really, cause I know you gotta dig out a stump in there and everything like that, but. I'd be just a little leery about that stone mulch right on that corner.
They do indicate, at least in the other area, that a landscaping edge along, so, yeah. it's-
That would be on the grass side, that won't be along the sidewalk edge.
Could be.
Yeah, but then you got a trip factor then too, I mean, it's.
Anybody else have any other comments for the applicant?
I think they have maximized what they have to work
Yeah.
The only thing I noticed that Ben on his note to Michelle and all that. He has said the previous meeting, the building interior and exterior improvements were approved, that how you make it out on your state permits.
Oh, well, we're hand submitting them. We have not submitted.
We believe any day now.
Okay.
Yeah, our work is done. We're waiting on a few comments from our structural engineer yet. And I know our architect's been in touch with the state approver for Lannon, so he knows it's coming and. He's hopefully watching out for it very soon.
Yeah, he thinks a quick turnaround.
Good. Well, thanks for coming Monday night too. I know
Oh, yeah.
a couple people did ask me that night what was happening over there.
Yeah.
and I saw you guys pass through and I didn't get a chance to really speak with you, but.
Yeah.
Hopefully some folks got a chance to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing.
Yep,
And,
we-
and your landscaper said that these are good tolerant plants for
Yes.
salt.
Mhm.
To make a motion to approve the landscaping plan for 7291 North Land Road.
Second. The motion and a second, I would just add that we clarify that this is, items that were requested for their plan of operation. So these are like site plans.
So noted. Add that to the motion.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for
Thank
You're
you.
gonna
continuing
come
to
up, when are you gonna get your name?
work through this.
When's your name not gonna be an address?
Oh, right, I don't know. Soon.
Bartel is the name.
Working on it, huh?
Yeah.
It needs a name.
Yeah.
No, it cannot be LNR two.
Don't need that.
Well, I'm excited to see you start making some progress.
Yeah, we
We are
are.
too.
I'm sure.
It's
Yeah.
going a little slower than we had anticipated, so we're looking forward to getting these plans. over
That's how
soon.
12 That's how 1229 started slow and boy, that sure turned out nice.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to Lannon.
Thanks.
After a year.
Good night.
Item 10, discussion and possible preliminary action on the FEMA floodplain ordinance. This one I'm gonna let Hector answer.
Sure.
This ordinance is a result of mapping or updating of the mapping of waterways and flood areas and floodplains in Waukesha County. And the Department of Natural Resources has delegated authority from the federal government with regards to the enforcement of the Clean Water Act and also enforcement of the regulations that are put forth by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they have a great deal of clout because it is the federal government that offers flood insurance and no one else because of the high risk. And so periodically, in my experience, once every 10 years, 8 to 10 years, the DNR surveys areas, updates floodplain, prepares maps. And those maps have been delivered to Waukesha County. I believe they've been delivered to the village. And in conjunction with that, the DNR assigns staff to update and beef up the floodplain ordinance. We have one on the books. And pretty much every one of my Waukesha County communities is going through this process. And it's a rather standardized upgrade. In some instances, there are provisions that don't apply to the community, but sometimes the DNR insists that they be kept in. For example, in many communities, they do not have much of a presence of a manufactured home area. We do here, and that's a provision that a number of my communities have removed, and the DNR has reinstated with the attitude that, well, it's not hurting you in any way. As to specific changes, we do not have a track draft to show you, but should you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to attempt to respond to them. What I've done is I've assigned Trace Hummel to handle this for all of our communities to take advantage of the learning curve that he has already mastered. And this has been submitted to the DNR and has been approved as we were informed by Strand. And it's before you for your information and input. The next step that's going to take place will be that Brenda will have to notice a public hearing because this is a modification of a zoning ordinance. And it will have to be a class 2 publication. The hearing will be before the village board. I have recommended that when the hearing takes place, that there be a joint meeting of the planning commission and the board, because to modify any of our zoning ordinances, it's necessary that the planning commission give its input. The board can accept or reject that input. More often than not, it's accepted and it's beneficial, but I first wanted to provide you with a heads up opportunity in this document.
Hector, will we have to update our master plans, our floodplain plans, and our zoning maps, which show these areas if they've changed?
I believe that the fact that we have those new maps, that they will be substituted for what we have in place. I haven't spoken with them specifically about that because Nicole has been handling this, but I think it's a good question to follow up with Ben.
Yeah.
Yes.
My understanding through some of the previous communications at a surface level has been that there were some no real significant changes for the village plan, very insignificant changes.
Do we have any tributaries that go through land?
You
Well,
got,
then that,
you got the Fox River.
yeah, well, that's gonna be the key. Any homes in that area are gonna potentially can be affected. When I lived at Fairfield Place condominiums, we backed up the Pewaukee River and they changed the floodplain and all of our buildings went into the floodplain. And we had to
Happy insurance.
well, we had to have somebody come out and resurvey everything, and it ended up just one building. Ended up in that floodplain, but I fought FEMA on it because the Pewaukee River behind it is nothing. I mean, it's less width than this, but
Yeah.
but you lose.
But this is why we've been watching the development over here on the Solo project, the new one, as well as, you know, we kind of like. Can't say much to the falls, we gotta watch how they could affect backing up into us, which they look at. But I know when we had that major rain that time, the whole lower street down here, basements are flooded.
Oh, yeah.
It was bad news down here, because it all starts by the park here, where that little creek along the park.
Yeah.
You know, coming down by it just backed up into this town. I sit up on the hill and I was ready to get my boat out to go fishing, you know?
We had a 1.5 feet of water by the foundry, by the buggery.
Yep.
Because that also drains Lisbon. People don't understand that. We take water from Lisbon, it comes down through there. And I drove through it, it was 1.5 feet. And right now you wouldn't believe there could be anything there.
A good example of the attitude or concern that FEMA has would be the experiences that we witnessed recently in New Hampshire and in Vermont, where, you know, communities that historically dry have been flooded. So it's nothing to be taken lightly. It does create a burden for anyone trying to expand or improve property that is on the cusp of the flood fringe area. It can be done through adherence to flood-proofing techniques. But you do have to go through the surveying process. It takes forever and a day. It has to be recorded. And it's important to do it correctly, because otherwise, at the time of sale, financing becomes impossible, and that's not a work.
This also helps the engineers too, that they have to adhere, you know, when Strand, in this case, has to review stuff for us, so. Yeah, because I was looking at, you know, the private campgrounds or anything like that, but, you know, and I said, wait a minute, this is probably a document that's being used everywhere, it's best to leave it as a loan and everything like that. So you want us to make a recommendation to the village board to, anything, or is there
Not at this time,
So-
because we have to go through the formal process.
I mean, do you want us to recommend that the village board?
Well,
Set up-
ultimately, when you hear the comments from anyone, if they show up, I frankly have to tell you that I never really seen anybody come up to a hearing and object, but we have to go through the process.
So you're looking for a motion to
Tell the village board
advise
to
the
proceed?
clerk to schedule.
Recommend to the
Public
clerk
hearing.
that she proceed with the publication of the notice of public hearing in consultation with the village board, so that it can be done at a time mutually convenient, so that you can appear, have a quorum, listen to comments of none, make a motion to recommend.
I make a motion to what Hector just said.
Yeah, okay, so we have a motion to recommend the village clerk initiate the process of scheduling a public hearing in conjunction with the village boards. Second input. Yeah,
I'll second.
we have a second, motion and seconded, any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Item 11, consideration of a recommendation to the village board of the adoption of the proposed zoning building ordinance enforcement procedure and related form letters. Sure, I will start this. So I think we're all aware of this process, at least in a general sense. But myself, Mr. De La Mora, Trace Hummel, Chief Bell, and Paul Lawner, the building inspector, have been communicating about formalizing a process that has been, at least since I've been on the planning commission, a bit of a concern in terms of how are we tracking and enforcing certain violations. And I think it'd be fair to say that any of us that have spent any time on this commission have felt that at one time or another that things are slipping through the cracks or not getting addressed, things of that nature. So what we want to do is formalize and memorialize a process that can be initiated with very clear steps that we get walked through, and a mechanism for tracking and inputting data relevant to each particular tax key associated with any such complaints. So before you see some draft documents that Hector's office has been working on. And kind of an outline here of the process as we've kind of roughed it in for now. What I talked to that group about in the past was, well, you know, we'll have a process built. Then we can take that to the planning commission and the village board, ultimately. But this is by no means set in stone. This is certainly open for discussion and collaboration. We simply felt that we wanted to have at least a complete starting point to work from. So unless I've left anything out, Hector, I think feel free to add.
Well, given the limited manpower resources that the village has, and given virtually endless possible places of enforcement, I felt that it was necessary to basically get together with the enforcement team to build a consensus as to how we would go about handling these kinds of matters. We will never run out of potential enforcement matters as far as I'm concerned, not only in this community, but pretty much any community. And I'll close with look. You want to take at so-called infractions. We agreed on one thing, that we had to prioritize things. And we didn't agree to any specific number, but it had to be a manageable number. And the filtering process for the prioritizing was, I think, agreed to be matters of health and safety over perhaps aesthetic issue, although that's not to say that aesthetic issues aren't of importance and shouldn't be looked into. The other thing that we talked about is that I think there's an institutional hesitation on the part of building inspectors and police departments to function as code enforcers. That's not what cops do. And building inspectors, they look at new construction, approved for safety. And traditionally in southeastern Wisconsin, most building inspectors earn their keep by doing a thorough job in inspecting new construction. They are hesitant to put themselves in a confrontation situation with citizens who because they are comfortable with the status quo, or because they don't have resources, or they are ignorant of the requirements applicable to their situation, resist. And no one really likes to go through the day having people push back. I think we reached a consensus that part of the building inspector's responsibility in this community will be code enforcement. And the building inspector appropriately brought it to everyone's attention that that's going to cost the village on an hourly basis, and he is sensitive about the village incurring those costs. Because traditionally, building inspectors are paid on a percentage of the permit application being paid. And this is something that's coming out of the pockets of, at least up front, of the community. And the goal typically is to achieve compliance rather than to extract fine money out of people. However, in some cases, people are not convinced that the village is serious about these matters. And so we laid out the steps to be followed. And the steps are basically straightforward. A complaint can be initiated by a citizen documenting the complaint. Anonymous complaints will not be accepted. The reason being that, not that we want to entangle people in possible prosecutions, but ultimately, if a prosecution is initiated and there is resistance, there's a denial of culpability, the village needs to prove the case. And we need witnesses. The attorneys can be the witnesses, and oftentimes the citizens have firsthand knowledge, and they have to be brought before the court to testify. Apart from that, it will be possible for the building inspector and the police chief to, because they are in the community, identify situations that are in violation of the ordinance. And they have the discretion to, and I emphasize that word, discretion, to pursue violations and to prioritize. An example that I'm very familiar with is a police officer who stand on that corner and over a period of time identify violations by numerous drivers. Burned out tail lamps, missing license plate, not stopping long enough. But again, some kind of discretion has to be exercised, because otherwise there are potentially too many things to be pursued. Now, in my career as a prosecutor, I've been told, well, if we have these provisions, why do we have them if we don't enforce them? Well, that's because when these ordinances are enacted, the legislators do not have a collective memory or understanding of what's on the books. And they focus on a particular violation that has been of concern in the community. And it's up to the enforcement officers to use discretion to pursue that. And it's ultimately up to the judge to evaluate what kind of sanction is in order. Most judges, in my experience, will accept compliance over the payment of fines. Except in situations where people are very recalcitrant. And so we decided also, with the assistance of President Yates, it's important for the building inspector, the police department, and the president, and perhaps others that may be authorized, such as the clerk, to have access to an active matrix, which would electronically record the complaints and track the progress in pursuing these complaints so that they're not forgotten. The complaint is to be followed by an inspection. If there is resistance on the part of the property owner to an inspection, and if there's sufficient information, we have agreed that there will be the utilization of an inspection warrant. And to do that, we have to go to the municipal judge and show probable cause that there is a violation. However, we do not want to slam the hammer down immediately. We want to notify people that there is perception that there's a violation. So we've included in this packet an initial letter bringing this to the attention of people. And if there is an unwillingness on the part of the individual to be responsive, we have a follow-up letter, and the matrix is supposed to help out in that process. If there is no response, well then there needs to be a decision made by typically the building inspector or the police chief as to what the best way of enforcing this matter would be. And to that end, we have submitted to you a draft of an ordinance amendment to section 78.21, which basically implements on page 2 in section 3 at the top of the second page, a routing channel for prosecution. Currently, the ordinance reads that basically prosecution can be brought in the name of the village with the authorization of the village board to commence any legal proceedings necessary to enforce the provision of the chapter or the building code, including the collection of forfeitures. It is my recommendation that there be two channels. That in a situation where a fine is believed to be the primary motivator and the imposition of the fine is appropriate to compel or to encourage the property owner to come in compliance, that the matter be brought to the Plan Commission. In a situation where some kind of injunctive court order needs to be issued, then the route would be to go to the circuit court. And typically circuit court prosecutions take much longer, are costly, and in my opinion, require the approval of the village board, because some real dollars can be expended. And you can, in some situations, win the battles, but lose the war because you get a judgment against an entity that's really penniless. But at least you have a court order to correct a particular problem. A classical example would be where you have people with junk vehicles. If after exhausting efforts to find someone, you need a court order to come in and haul away some of that violating abandoned vehicles. You need a court order from the circuit court that's enforceable. And hopefully we won't have too many situations once the word gets out that the village really means business in this arena. So this process also contemplates that the building inspector and the police department, and not just the chief, but the chief can delegate these responsibilities to someone who is on the police department, who has appropriate interpersonal skills and sensitivity to situations where we don't need technical expertise and ability for that. We default and involve the building inspector in some situations where it's perceived that there'll be some resistance. The police will accompany the building inspector to calm everyone down if need be. So at this point, I am going to stop talking and invite comments or questions that you might have. The next step that I would envision motion for you to make would be to recommend that this ordinance amendment be submitted to the legislative committee and the village board for their consideration and adoption.
I have questions. First, in your comments, you said that if a fine should be determined, and then it should come to the planning commission. Does the planning commission have the authority to assess that fine? No. Then should it not go to the village board?
Well, the village board doesn't assess fines. See, only the municipal court can assess the fine. The planning commission simply weighs in and engages in what I call job holding. That is, we notify the property owner, and we encourage the property owner to be here for your session. And when the matter appears on your agenda, I would invite you, without going on the property, to make yourself aware of the problem, so that you can hopefully have a dialogue with the individual. If the individual comes in and says, I'm not employed for half a year, I am concerned about the hole in my roof, that's my house, and I don't want squirrels creeping in, but you know, I put tarps up and now I have a job and I need time to correct that. It's within your discretion to say, building inspector, come back in 30 days, or we'll give you 45 days to correct the situation. And you come back here and we'll see what progress, if any, you've made. That's the goal. I think that I view the plan commission as soft sell, but serious-minded enforcers of the provision. And oftentimes people, more often than not, it's just amazing. They live when these violations involve their home. They live oblivious to the negative impact that their situation has on their neighbors. They're okay with it. Why should other people bother? Well, it should be explained to them why it matters to us, because they're part of our community. And other people are trying to do their best to meet certain standards.
The other question I have is on page 2 of the procedure.
Yes.
Where it talks about the property owner in getting a warrant.
What's my number?
Inspection warrant, line 46.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, shouldn't that section be after the initial letter? Because you're getting a warrant before you're even giving the individual a letter to correct the property.
You need the inspection warrant to go in and inspect the property.
To determine if there is in
Yeah,
fact
if there
a
is.
violation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is where they've gone
To go
and,
inside the
Yeah.
building
or you go on the property.
or you got the property,
Yeah,
okay,
within the boundary grass area. of the
that type
property.
of inspection, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's only if they're resistant to
Right.
allowing the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to go through this 15 years ago. There was issues with people hooking their sump pumps up to the sanitary sewer, once we got sanitary sewers installed. So, and we looked in the manholes, and we could see clear water running. So we started going around and checking sump pump connections. And, we had about 3 people, as I recall, with us on the property. You can sure understand what they were doing. And so we had to get inspection warrants. One gentleman, we almost had to put in handcuffs. But, of course, he was hooked up to the sanitary sewer. So that's the purpose of this. You have to look and ascertain, of course, and people are very objectionable to going on their property, especially when they know they're doing something wrong. So,
okay,
Although I have to tell you, I had a case early on in my career where a neighbor of mine, 3 doors away, who was general counsel for a large corporation, would not let an inspector enter his house. We finally went to court. We got the inspection warrant enforced, and there was no violation. And just on philosophical principle, we didn't want government intruding. So there's a process and we have to respect that. The other concern I should share with you, express during our discussions, is that these enforcement mechanisms sometimes are taken over by people that are feuding next door neighbors. And for that reason, we want to make sure that we don't become a tool in that process. For that reason, we want people to disclose who they are if they're making a complaint. And secondly, we want to verify the information ourselves. Because it's just very counterproductive to be brought up in that. Our building inspector has worked in a number of communities. We have an excellent building inspector, by the way, in my opinion, based on my prior work with other communities. And he just is sensitive to the village being caught up in that stuff. And that's why, rather than making him the verbal persuader, matter comes before you, and in a soft and gentle hand in glove fashion, probe why and what can be done to persuade people to comply.
You know, I like to say is, this looks nice, I mean, you've done a nice job and everything, we got good baseline. I've got just a couple items and I'm gonna break it down in a couple of little things. On the letter sheet for your initial notice,
Yes, sir.
if you could put on the RE line where it says ordinance non-compliance, insert. First off, I imagine all of July 18, 2023, that won't ever show up on these letters. But under the RE, if you could have it highlighted as initial notice. And then on the final notice letter, on the RE line, if you could put in final notice. Okay, those are just, you know, that way people are knowing that they're getting initial notice and that they're getting the final notice. We respectfully ask you, and then down below number 2, it says, we respectfully ask you, remediate the items by this and describe it within, who sets them days? Is that set by the building inspector? Is that set by the police? They have what they all have,
Yeah.
matrix?
Yes, they
Oh.
have to
Okay,
make a field judgment.
okay, I've got no problem with that, okay. So now just getting into the procedure, I have a few items. If, under A, under the complaint, but it is initiated by either,
Line up.
I'm sorry, it'll be line 5, we're gonna start right about there.
Sure.
The village land resident fills out a formal complaint located on a website, and submits it to the village. It would be nice if we could have that website, if it could be on a fill, so where we can submit through the website would be nice, you know, that way you don't have to have paper, you can generate it that way. And if it comes in, if the person delivers it to the village clerk, that they could pass it on to the police chief for that person.
Well,
In other words.
I agree with your
There's no-
approach. The problem is that I think before we spend time, doing software, processing to facilitate it, because we don't know, ideally, from my standpoint as a prosecutor, I'd want them to use the form and to attach as many pages as possible.
Okay, okay,
With detail.
that's okay, that's,
You know,
but,
fill in the blank form
well,
lends itself to just cursory submission of
I
information.
guess what I
And
would
more
refer,
work for the clerk.
what I would refer you to that software would be in the future.
Yes,
Okay, but what I really wanna get to is anybody that's bringing in this form. If the police ain't here, I hope that they could drop it off at the village clerk and it could be, so I mean, so we could say in there that the village clerk and then pass it on. And then now what happens if we have a complaint that's being generated by the plan commission? I.e. on the business, you know, like. Our people down here on AFW, we talked about that back in May. It's almost August and we never set a date for AFW to get in here and consequently, we still got operating businesses that should have been shut down. Until everything's been handled, you know, maybe that would be the kick in the can.
well, here's what I would recommend. You want to avoid as a body wearing two hats. In other words, it becomes very awkward if you are the plaintiff, if you will, on a complaint, and then when the matter comes to the plan commission, you're also the judge. My recommendation is that you are sensitive to the problems in the community, and nothing precludes you as an individual from submitting complaints. And you should consider doing that, provided that when the matter comes before the plan commission, the complainter, if you will, should recuse himself from participating, because otherwise citizens wrongly will say, well, the whole thing is rigged. And the goal of bringing people before the plan commission is to confirm to them that, look, it isn't just one individual who's concerned about the inappropriate behavior. It's shared by a group of people that are representative of the community. So,
Well, I guess my situation is I really don't look at neighbors, I look at businesses, because I live here, you know, like. You know, you can talk to your neighbor for the most part, it's when you have a business operating. That's not legal, you know, how do we, that's what I wanted to see addressed, you know, and that's where but the only thing I have left on all this is to. Make sure that any of these letters that go out, I see the final letter goes out, registered mail, but any other item should go out certified mail. At least we have a record that it was certifiedly mailed to the person.
we talked about that, and, problem with, certified mail is, number one, you know, regular letter now went up to 65 cents. Initially, certified letters are expensive to send and can be refused by the recipient.
I got that as a note.
Yeah, so what I oftentimes recommend is that letters be sent out with a return receipt request. And oftentimes a companion, regular over the mail, letter be sent, duplicate with a return address. And if it doesn't come back, we can fall back under presumption. I don't know how true it is, but the presumption is that if it doesn't come back, it's been delivered. And we go from there. It's not, these letters are not intended to do anything other than to persuade the judge sitting here or the circuit judge that, look, Judge, the first thing we did was not write out complaints. We made an effort, facing it, parking time to try to convince people that there's concern here, and they ignored it, they blew it off. So it's not like they didn't know, they should have known. Well, they didn't open their mail, or they were too busy. Well, whose fault is that? And I've had people defend themselves on that basis. Well, I got it, but I didn't really think that they meant to do anything.
I've got a great comment on that when we were doing the cleanup 10-15 years ago. We sent letters out, gave people 30 days. This was on the tree trimming. And then we followed it up after 30 days with a second letter, giving them an additional 30 days. And so then we went around and started trimming people's trees. And we had a couple of people say, well, yeah, I got the letter, but I didn't think you'd do anything because Lannon never enforces anything. That's what was going on.
Well, I remember when we went after Russ's auto body up there, and he got in the line real, after he got serious about it.
Well, I've got, you're finished.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to just make sure that it says initial notice and final notice, and I can also even see that if the police chief would just hand him a copy of the initial letter upon, in work too, so.
It's a question of manpower employment.
But if they're up there, if they're already gone, they can always just. Merry Christmas.
No, I got. Well, I find this quite interesting because back in about 2008 or 9, we started a real effort to clean up the village. And we worked with a very learned municipal attorney, Dale Moore.
Yeah, Hector something, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had a real good fellow by the name of Doug. And this tracks with a lot of what we did and developed, and we were quite successful. I do have some comments though. First of all, it's chapter 78, which is zoning ordinance, but also we have chapter 30 and chapter 58, which causes violations you have to enforce. And chapter 30 is a big one. It's environmental, and there's a lot of things that need to get enforced in chapter 30. For instance, one of which is junk vehicles. And we took 30 junk vehicles out of the village in about a year and a half. There was a lot of people who argued with me that there was no way there was 30 in the village. Ultimately. So I think somehow up to Hector, how we have to incorporate both chapter 30 and chapter 50 into this.
Sure. 50 or 58?
58.
Yeah.
And
I think there were 30 junk vehicles on that one property you showed me a
yeah,
couple weekends ago.
yeah. Then the procedure with the letters and that is very, very good. We did pretty much the same thing. And I think it's important that the official, be it the police or the building inspector, stop and talk to them the first time. We tried to say that we're friendly here in Lannon, and rather than getting a nasty letter in the mail and that kind of stuff, we would talk to people. Maybe more, half or a little bit more don't understand that they are violating the ordinances. So you need to explain that to them, what it is, what you're looking for them to do. So I think that's very important, and that's incorporated in here. Then when we get to the violation procedure, and I do have, again, I know chapter 30, because the Director of Public Works has some authority. He's the only other one besides the building inspector and chief of police that has authority. He has authority over trees and weeds, and he's delineated as the sole authority. In fact, he has to go out and mark the trees and talk to the owners about cutting them and trimming them, or what is the case. This is getting to be quite critical now because of the ash borer. And before, we were just trimming the 10-foot violations. But now we've got a lot of dead trees adjacent to the right of way, which by our ordinance has to be removed. It's a hazard. The other thing is, we have durations here of how to do this. But in chapter 30, when you're dealing with trees, it's very defined that it cannot be less than 48 hours or more than 14 days. So that doesn't track with all these other things. And it also clearly defines that if they don't do it in that duration, then we can do it as the village and put it on their taxes. Because you'll always hear, I don't give a shit, I'm never gonna pay this no matter what. And then I had to say, well, that's fine, but if you don't, in 3 years, we're gonna have the sheriff auction your property and take the money. And that normally changes the attitude to some degree. So I think Hector's gotta look at how he incorporates the chapter 30 stuff. And I think that's, again, go back to the initial letter. On line 74. Within a reasonable amount of time to be determined by the chief or the inspector. Reasonable is quite a wiggle room. I'm used to it in legal things, but I think what is reasonable? It's purely subjective and that, and so, and it's difficult, but I think you need to assign some period of time before we start to take action. Now, one thing is our paving ordinance. So you can't demand somebody pave in October because it's probably not gonna get done. But what we did is we were very careful to go out and tell people that in April, that they're gonna have to pave. And if they don't pave by, and we would normally say October 1st, then we would start the $100 per day per diem. And that would give them some incentive to get it done. It's difficult sometimes to get pavers and it's expensive. But again, they'll put you off. There's one property down here on Lannon Road that we served to pave probably 12 years ago. It's not paved yet. So,
I know the village has a list of about 30 that need to be paved, and
oh,
so
yes,
that should be a letter that should go out this fall, letting them know that next year that they need to pave.
yes.
You know, so that way, we get them up on speed, you know,
Who has that list?
the village clerk has it.
And we've,
Do you, Brenda?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
right, and formalized stuff.
and I don't know, Mike's got all of them, he and I talked, but it's pretty dramatic.
I think I missed one.
And some of them are businesses, including the quarries. So, if you see white residue on the road, that's a violation. In discussing on the, return receipt mail. Yes, we ran into quite a few problems with that, with people not, accepting them. And just saying, you didn't tell me and I didn't know, we even had that come up in court. When we were pursuing one gentleman who refused to get a plan of operation for over a year. And we did have to go to court, we did a change of venue, we went in Pewaukee. But of course, we had all the letters and notices and the hand delivered ones by the chief of police. And, well, lieutenant at that time, and, building official. And, what I would make one recommendation here is that in addition to the mailings and such, that you hand deliver it. Now, what we did a couple of times, and now it's much easier with the phones, much like Amazon and stuff does, is we taped it to the door and we took a picture of it. And it was dated. And that worked out quite well in one instant. I never know, you never told me, nobody said, and we produced that picture. So that would be one thing I would add there. Then, I think we're, now, I'm on line 138. More than a monetary sanction. I think the monetary sanction in the form of a per diem is the most successful thing we did. Which the village hadn't done up until I came in and stirred things up. But it's quite successful because it starts to give the people who have all kinds of excuses, who really don't want to do anything, a little bit more incentive when you tell them that it's $100 a day. And particularly when some people say, well, I can't get it done that quick, it's gonna take me at least a month. And I would say, well, that's okay, but that's only $3,000, you know, so take as long as you would like. The advantage besides giving them an incentive is it also does, if we prevail, provide revenue to pay for our highly expensive attorneys and the building inspector and the other, the village clerk, etc. Now, we had at least 3 people that I'm aware of that we collected over $10,000. And that was quite successful. This was awarded by the court. Of course, we had our favorite property on the corner of Main and Good Hope that people have been complaining about since the later 1990s. And I was told that you can't do anything with them, and we tried and you won't prevail. And so we started on them. What we did is we cited them for 5 items. And it's per day per item. So he was running at $500 a day. And he resisted for about 2 or 3 weeks before the light bulb came on what was happening. And then he started, but he would come in and tell the judge that he just needs more time, which he has been doing recently again. And so we had him up to $23,000 when he finally complied and came in. And then asked the judge that she should dismiss all the charges because now he's complying. And the judge said, well, I agree, it's a lot of money. I'll reduce it to $8,500, which we almost had to get the rescue squad for him. But he did come in 2 days later with his brown paper bag with $100 bills in it. And took care of that. Now, of course, in the last 10 years, he's fallen right back into the same situation. And what we found is you really have 3 types of people. You have people who don't know and will gladly do it. You have some of the people that just don't like government telling them what to do, and I don't think this ordinance is right and thus and so. And they'll tend to drag their feet a while until they realize you start pushing for the $100 a day. And then you have some that we call resistors. And it's just like Hector was saying, they don't want to conform. You can't, it's my property. I pay taxes on it. I'm going to do what I want and make me. And unfortunately, for thousands of dollars, we had to make some. So that's for me, the most important thing is the per diem, not necessarily collecting it, but making them notice that, hey, if you don't want to do it, we've given you 30 days. On day 31, it's going to start costing you $100 a day. And of course, it could be 1,000, but you're never going to collect that from a judge unless it's a business with a major offense. In that statement, I would like to say on that second letter that we talked about, I talked about hand delivery. In there, if we go down, there's no line numbers, but if you go down to where it says the village can seek $50 to $1,000 per day that the violations remain. I would like to accent that to say per day, per violation. Because where we've got some people that have got 4 or 5 violations, they said, well, okay, I cleaned up this one and now I'm done. And oh no, what about these other ones? So I think we need to make it very clear that it's $100 a day per violation per day. And that way the meter can run quite quickly when you have a resistor. And of course, you can waive it if you have cooperative people didn't understand, people who have, like Hector said, extenuating circumstances. But this really gives you the hammer for a true resistor.
I agree. Just for the clarity of the record, the village has an ordinance that applies in a number of situations. And the ordinance specifically says $50 a day.
First day.
Yeah, so we have to be careful in speaking with people. Then they're gonna come back, they'll read the ordinance, and, oh, you misled me, whatever. But it does add up. In another one of my communities, I got a judgment for $113,000 on a per diem basis
Oh, yeah.
against the slum board. And Trace got a judgment of over $200,000 against the same slum board. And these are condominium buildings. And we just got to go ahead to commence foreclosure. And there are people who want to buy the property because they have an inherent value greater than the mortgage and all the liens and our basic fine judgment that we have. So it's a laborious process, but I think that once the word gets out, people talk and people start to clean up their home.
When we were successful with the $8,500, that went around the village so quick. It was unbelievable how, guy had to pay $8,000 just for cleaning up his yard. Yep. And boy, we started getting compliance quite easily then. So what I understand is what it is.
But. And. It's about the last one here. Now where. The building inspector, police chief, they have no. Ability to levy a fine or a ticket for a zoning ordinance.
No, but they can request one.
To,
No. What we've tried to do with this process is to involve the building inspector and police chief with our office. Trace Hummel is now the chief prosecutor in municipal court here. And because there hasn't been a slew of these, what we typically do in most communities, instead of writing a citation, a short citation, disregarding an official kind of citation, we write a long form complaint.
Yeah.
And the long form complaint explains to the judge. Initial effort was made on the state. Follow-up effort was made on the state. With the lack of response, we went before the plan commission. The plan commission recommended, hopefully after talking to the property owner, recommended the initiation of the prosecution in municipal court, and we go from there.
there's no process in place where they, without the direction of the planning commission, building board, where they would go and find somebody.
That's correct. No, give them backup.
The only one is, if they start construction without a building permit, then there's a double fee for the building permit. And that's by the building inspector.
Right, and the building inspector has stop work order.
Yes, that's
order
important
also.
So this will all get initiated by an initial complaint.
Yeah.
That's when the process starts.
Mhm.
And we did find in the past that when it is building type things, it's important to involve the building official because he has a lot more say in court in the state of Wisconsin on building type things than the chief of police. So we were always careful to involve the building inspector as we went down the line if we thought we were going to be going to court.
So complaints lodged with, through the complaint process. The next step is coming to the planning commission.
No,
Or
it goes to the building inspector and or the police chief.
Okay.
They follow up
On the complaint.
and create the matrix. Ideally, talk to the property owner and make a judgment as to the circumstances.
Yeah, we did find back when we were doing this, that when you're going to start to do the per diem, the village board should authorize that to go ahead. And we were lucky on all our cases, but one attorney who was working pro bono for a resistor tried to say that we didn't authorize, the village board didn't authorize $100 a day.
Yeah.
So And after that, we made sure that the village board would authorize it.
That's one of the reasons why we have, the provision that the village board has to authorize are going to circuit court.
Yeah.
Because if they raise that defense, we can fall back on the notion that the plan commission, if you look at the authority of the plan commission, in a general sense, you have a responsibility to enforce the applicable codes of the village. So, and if they succeed, well, we'll start all over, or we'll just take it to the village board and seek permission to go to circuit court. You know, that's the way we deal with it, because fundamentally, I've always said, look, it's cheaper for your client. Just comply, you'll have something to show for it. Otherwise, okay, he goes to court, he fights, he prevails, what does he have to show for it? Unless he doesn't pay you, but still, a lot of aggravation and wasted time.
There will be times that stuff will come to the planning commission for the recommendation to send it to the village board.
No,
No,
Because
No.
it's a complaint.
because then what I'm trying to understand is that you're adding in the name of the village, it's authorization of the land and plan commission for municipal court prosecution with authorization of the village board, any legal proceedings. Why is the plan commission named there then?
because I felt that it was good to have a stopping place where someone independent of the building inspector and the police chief is looking at these circumstances and saying, yes, this is a situation that needs to be corrected. And I would not be shocked or opposed to the plan commission saying, Mr. So-and-so, is it true that you got these two letters? Yes. Is it true that you haven't done it? Yes. Why? Say, look, if we were to give you 10 days to correct it, can you do it? No. Why? You know, and work out something.
So then, but then our action would be to,
Just recommend
To
that we proceed with the
proceed.
prosecution.
right, and that would
Maybe
automatically
it's-
generate a notice to the village board, or would that generate?
No
the
notice
action
to the
then?
village board, we just filed the
Okay,
complaint.
okay.
Yeah, but if it's a
That-
more egregious thing where someone has say a wall that's about to collapse.
Yeah.
And it hasn't collapsed.
Yeah.
And the person hasn't reinforced the situation, don't worry, nobody's been harmed.
Okay,
Wait, we'll go to the board.
do you have enough? That you wanna bring this back to us, or is there enough
have
that we
enough.
could let you just take it to legislation now, if we make that motion?
Yes,
I make a motion that we send the zoning building ordinance enforcement procedure to the legislation committee of the village board.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just after you're gonna rework it over chapter.
Yeah,
30.
yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be modified with some of our
Yeah,
comments.
with
and conceived comments.
Yeah.
And incorporated into that. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion adjourned.
Second, motion and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
We're
We're-
adjourned.
He doesn't have anything
You
else
can-
to do.
Brenda,
Well, stay in the vestibule. We'll lock the door behind you.
We used to have the ambulance.